Hey everyone, welcome to the Psyched Practice podcast, your one stop for practical and useful clinical information, masterful insights from experts in the field, and a guide to daily living. I'm Ray Christner, and with me,
Paul Wagner.
Paul, we are coming to the end of 2024.
And what a like I love doing these kind of review episodes because it really kind of forces us to stop and be intentional with like looking back and seeing what really has happened over the course of the podcast, but in particular over the year. And we've hit a couple different milestones, which is really cool. And we also have some exciting ideas of where we're going, and more groundwork that we're laying to really kind of take the Psych to Practice name into its next life.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was doing an interview for another podcast just recently, and the question came up about how this started, and it was like kind of going back, going, wow, like this really was this organic, process of, just conversations that you and I had, and to see it evolve over not only this year, but really over the last couple of years, it's been great. I mean, just what we've learned from just wonderful experts out there, and just honestly, just the conversation on a weekly basis is always fun. So.
It really is. And, I know we don't typically, share a lot of the analytics or data, but just kind of give a glimpse, like, over the course of the lifespan of the podcast, we've had over 15,000 downloads, which really is mind boggling. And then I believe we're in over 70 countries at this point. And so, kind of the idea that we're sitting and we're talking, and just the scope of how widespread it is. I love that we are able to engage in like sharing this important information, and having fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably the idea of how far of a reach, when I saw the number that we're now listened to in 72 countries, that kind of blew me away. And I
Yeah.
mean, some of the countries, of course, fewer listeners than others, but the fact that we've had that kind of a reach has been really exciting. And I'm looking forward to kind of the next steps that we're going to get to take to maybe even hit a broader audience. So.
Yeah. And, maybe before we get into the next steps, I like, wanted to just call out some of the episodes and the topics that really we were able to hone in on. And, we had just a variety of just excellent guests that we were able to talk to. And, I think earlier on in the year, we had that opportunity to talk with Dr. David Jobs on the CAMS model and, suicidality. And I believe, soon after, I don't think you were actually able to make the conversation, but
Yeah.
I got to talk with Ray Giuseppe, and what, like, a name that I remember hearing in school, and such a cool opportunity to, to hear from him, and like, his work with anger. And so, those were two that just really can kind of stand out for me. And I'm curious, like, who are some of the guests that really stand out for you this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, those two were great, and even though I've had a chance to know Dr. Di Giuseppe for a little while, and he, we've mentioned Art Freeman, who's my mentor, who's a great friend of Dr. Di Giuseppe, and that's kind of how I got introduced to his work. But yeah, COVID got me that day, and I didn't get to didn't get to make it. Yeah, David Jobs was one that it also was just such a fascinating episode. I thought was really good. As I kind of went through the year, I guess some of the more maybe recent ones, but we really had that nice series around self care or mindfulness, and it was just kind of a few episodes in a row that just had some great content. And Chris Germer and Willem Kuiken, both talking about mindfulness. And really, I mean, for something I've done for years, I learned something new from both of them. Chris Germer's work around the self-compassion piece in that, honestly, it's really changed my behavior, which again, kind of a secondary benefit from doing all of this. It makes me reflect a little bit. So those were two really great great topics. And then our follow up around ethics and self care just felt like a real nice connection across the three episodes.
It really did. And, I can't help but, be grateful for, how we even had that opportunity. And I believe, it was through kind of a connection with Guilford Press.
Hmm.
the publishing company, and we got to help promote their book. And getting to work with just the idea of connecting with publishers, and them being able to share this information. So one, getting to read some really excellent material, and I believe we were able to talk to the Banished Bedtime Battles with Chelsea Tucker and Ellen Flannery Schroeder, and that was just a I still use and recommend that book in terms of differing parents and helping them out with that transition. So again, great opportunities. And then I think our most recent guest as well, Jess Stewart, and it
Yeah.
was such a great time to hearing a little bit of the banter between you both, but also being able to talk about media and device usage. And so some great guests this year.
Yeah, and yeah, I think kind of mentioning the bedtime battles and then the media use with Jess. Yeah, I think again, kind of a common theme through some of these are just great ways to help parents, and some tips of what we can do as mental health professionals to help facilitate with parents, and but also just some really great skills. I mean, I've had parents listen to the bedtime battles episode as well as read the book. So I mean, yeah, I love the fact of that some of these episodes this year really crossed not only a professional standpoint, but also moved a little bit into just those who have kids in general. And going back to I think the mindfulness. I mean, I think we really looked at those as opportunities for professionals in the field. I've had a number of people who have approached me and said, "Oh wow, I'm a nurse or I'm a teacher, and I heard that episode on self compassion, and gosh, I just really needed that. I needed so yeah,
Yeah.
such a cool connection with some of these topics."
And that's really kind of just one of the many benefits that we get from the show is just the opportunity to connect with so many different individuals and having different opportunities, and maybe kind of taking a look forward of what's coming up. And we're hoping that we can continue to share and promote this, but also helping out individuals in the field. And so I know we've talked about it before in a couple different episodes, but we're gaining more and more traction, working towards becoming a continuing education provider. And whether we've gotten approval for home study for certain material, with the ability for certain podcast episodes, if you've listened to them. It's just popping over to that website, being able to, signing up, taking the exam and getting credits for the podcast episodes. And we're also looking to really kind of have some refined video library as well. And as we're going, we love kind of those catchphrases. And one that just really stood out is the idea of we want to be able to provide the flexibility to fit your lifestyle of learning. And I think that's really what we're looking to capture here as we're moving into the next stages of psych practice.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of go back to our original kind of talk about how we were going to develop this. And, we really started about this idea of sitting with people, talking and learning, and really in some ways an informal setting like a conference, lobby. But yeah, it's exciting to see this kind of now transition to being able to not only turn the podcast into continuing ed opportunities, but now with the resources we have and the connections that we've made through the podcast to now offer even more in-depth content. And this is exciting for us. I mean, I'm a lucky I get to go and talk to a lot of people at trainings, and now to be able to have a place that we can kind of video archive some of these things and really hone in on topics, it's exciting. I mean, I think we're a field that's constantly evolving, and the idea of now that we can go through these kind of on demand type training opportunities is great, and excited that we're going to be a part of it.
And speaking of the early conception, like just that disseminating good information, and we've worked to really have the podcast be an outlet for that, and just adding on, like, hopefully this substantial change in a positive way, where just housing good information, and allowing the others to be able to have access to that on a wider scope. And so really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I think this is probably a good time to maybe even kind of make an announcement that so Paul and I have been doing this together for some time, and as we're looking to expand, we're bringing on another person to kind of help in this journey, and happened to be a former guest,
Yeah.
someone who was a guest here on the podcast. So we're happy to be joined by Dr. Dan Florell, who lives in Kentucky, but we have been in kind of constant contact with just the work he's doing around AI and ethics and just technology in general, and just seemed to be a really good fit. So we're excited to have him on board with us as we're kind of taking this next step.
And, with these changes, we're also looking to make some changes to our website and the way you're able to interact. So, it will eventually be the home where we have all of the continuing education content, but we're going to be soon migrating probably about a month. And, when that time truly does come, we'll be sure to post it all over social media and we'll talk about it in the episode that's dropping at that point in time. But, go on over to psychedpractice.com, and that's still where we're going to be at for the podcast. And then as we're getting closer and closer to launching the continuing ed, you'll already be there for that. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah, and with the holidays, we're going to be taking some time off. So the next time that you would typically see an episode on the 27th, we're going to be taking a break then, but we'll be back and dropping an episode on January 10th. And so stay tuned and be able to check out all of our social media, check out the new website. But until then, be well, stay psyched. The information contained in this podcast and on the Psyched to Practice website is intended for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing in this podcast or on the website is intended to be a substitute for professional, psychological, psychiatric, educational, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please note that no professional patient relationship is formed here, and similarly, no supervisory or consultative relationship is formed between the host, guests, and listeners of this podcast. If you need the qualified advice of a mental health professional or practitioner, please contact services in your area. Similarly, if you need supervision on clinical matters, please locate a supervisor with experience to fit your professional needs.